again. Welcome back to Grim Advice with Gretta Myers. You've entered the grimoire. Let's turn the page together. I apologize for the grim look today. I am not feeling the best. But I said to myself, I was like, you know, Self? And Self was like, what? I was like, you know what might make you feel better? Filming. I'm like, you're right, it might. So here we are trying that. It's a shorter story today. Doesn't appear all that spooky, so here we go. And my analysis probably isn't going to be very long. Let's give this a shot. So without further ado, Old Sultan. A farmer once had a faithful dog called Sultan who had grown old and lost all his teeth so that he could no longer hold anything tight. One day the farmer was standing with his wife before the door and said, "Tomorrow I intend to shoot Old Sultan. He is no longer of any use." His wife, who felt pity for the faithful beast, answered, "He has served us so long and been so faithful that we might well give him his keep." "What?" said the man. "You are not very sharp. He has not a tooth left in his mouth, and not a thief is afraid of him. Now he may be off. If he has served us, he has been well fed for it." The poor dog, who was lying stretched out in the sun not far off, had heard everything, and was sorry that the morrow was to be his last day. He had a good friend, the wolf, and he crept out in the evening into the forest to him and complained of the fate that awaited him. "Listen, friend," said the wolf, "be of good cheer. I can help you out of your trouble. I have thought of everything. Tomorrow early in the morning your master is going with his wife to make hay, and they will take their little child with him, and no one will be left behind in the house. While at work they always lay the child under the hedge in the shade. You lay yourself there too, just as if you wished to guard it. Then I will come out of the wood and carry off the child. You must rush swiftly after me, as if you would rescue it from me. I will let it fall, and you will take it back to its parents, who will think that you have saved it, and will be far too grateful to do you any harm. On the contrary, you will be in high favor, and they will never let you want for anything again." The plan pleased the dog, and it was carried out just as it was arranged. The father screamed when he saw the wolf running across the field with his child, but when Old Sultan brought it back, then he was full of joy, and stroked him, and said, "Not a hair of yours shall be hurt. You shall be well fed as long as you live." And to his wife he said, "Go home at once and make Old Sultan some soup, that he might not have to chew, and bring the pillow from my bed. I will give him that to lie upon." Hereforth Old Sultan was as well off as he could wish to be. Soon afterwards the wolf visited him, and was pleased that everything had succeeded so well. "But now," said he, "you will just turn a blind eye if, when I have a chance, I carry off one of your master's fat sheep." "Do not reckon upon that," answered the dog. "I will remain true to my master. I cannot agree to that." The wolf, who thought that this could not be spoken in earnest, came creeping about in the night, and was going to take away the sheep. But the farmer, to whom the faithful Sultan had told the wolf's plan, caught him and beat his hide soundly with the flail. The wolf had to flee, but he cried out to the dog, "Wait a bit, you scoundrel, you shall pay for this." The next morning the wolf sent the boar to challenge the dog to come out into the forest, so that they might settle the affair. Old Sultan could find no one to stand by him but a cat with only 3 legs, and as they went out together the poor cat limped along, and at the same time stretched out her tail into the air with pain. The wolf and his friend were already on the spot appointed, but when they saw their enemy coming, they thought that he was bringing a saber with him, for they mistook the outstretched tail of the cat for one. And when the poor beast hopped on its 3 legs, they could only think every time that it was picking up a stone to throw at them. So they were both afraid. The wild boar crept into the thicket, and the wolf jumped into a tree. The dog and the cat, when they came up, wondered that there was no one to be seen. The wild boar, however, had not been able to hide himself altogether, and one of his ears was still to be seen. While the cat was looking carefully about, the boar moved his ear. The cat, who thought it was a mouse moving there, jumped upon it and bit it hard. The boar made a fearful noise and ran away, crying out, "The guilty one is up in the tree." The dog and cat looked up and saw the wolf, who was ashamed of having shown himself so timid, and made friends with the dog again. Alright. I mean, you read the story title and you're like, Sultan? Like a ruler? No, it's a dog with no teeth. Clickbait titles, am I right? Or like, oh yeah, this is fine. Just kidding. Brothers Grimm. No, okay. Okay. So. I know what point I want to make. Like my main point. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say. First off. Alright, we'll start with this. Sometimes we come up with great plans and they work out great. And you're like, no one's the wiser. I'm great. And sometimes that's a good idea. Most of the time, however, it doesn't work out in your favor. And two, if it does, they'll catch you and they'll be like, you know, so weigh your pros and cons before putting together a well-crafted plan, like the dog did. Okay, the point I want to make at the end is the wolf was a good buddy. He was like, I'm gonna help save your life. And so then he's like, okay, can you do this thing for me? But he was pretty forceful about it. And so the dog was like, no, I like my master. I don't want to ruin the chances I've got. And the wolf was like, yeah, whatever. I saved your life. You're gonna let me do this thing. It's a hard situation. It's a weird situation. But it is a blackmailing situation. Like, even if you're friends with someone and you decide to help them out, like, asking them later to do something that compromises their morals, it's kind of a big no. And, like, especially in such a forceful way. Like, if the wolf would come up to him and be like, man, I'm hungry. Like, what do you suggest we do? And he's like, man, like, the farmer's about to kill that sheep. I could get you some of the meat. Like, make sure that's a thing that happens. Like, if you come to them and pitch, like, a question, instead of being like, you have to help me do this, that's a better way to go about it. Like, it's, like, yeah, like, it's not necessarily wrong to expect something in exchange for something that big, but the way he went about it was not great, you know? But here's what I want to say. Don't kowtow. Don't submit to blackmailers. As you see here, it works out better in the end, actually, if you just stand up to them. I mean, A, you feel better. Like, you don't have this, like I talked about yesterday, you don't have this weight, no, stop, weight, hanging over your head for forever. You've seen how it works in the movies and in real life and stuff. Someone gets blackmailed and they just go deeper and deeper in, just more and more afraid, until it's too hard to get out because they've already done so many, like, things they regret on top of this blackmail that they're like, well, I can't get out now. Even though they could, it would be hard and there would be consequences, but you could get out. So if the very first time the blackmailer shows up and is like, I'll use this against you, just don't be afraid. First off, try to just generally do something. Do things that you wouldn't be blackmailed for. Just don't do things that you would be scared other people would find out about and ruin your reputation or whatever. Just either don't be afraid of it, or just, like, not that that's necessarily a good idea, or just don't do things. Like if you decide to, like, do something a little risky, make a commitment with yourself. Be like, yeah, I'm doing this thing. And if anyone tries to be blackmailing me with it later, I'm gonna be fine. Right? Blackmail only works if the person's afraid that this information will get out and hurt them. then they do a bunch of other things to try and cover it up, and it's just bad. So here's my point. If you are in that situation, and someone's like, here's this thing I know you don't want people to know about. Do this thing for me. Stop it right there. Be like, no. Because it will only get worse from there, I promise. And you don't want that. You don't want that. Like, as bad as X information is at getting out, you don't know what they're gonna make you do after the fact. Like, if you agree to one time of blackmail. Right? Granted, I don't know your situation perfectly. I don't even know my own situation perfectly, you know? So don't take my word as law. Like, there are some situations where it's just, it might just be better to go along with the flow and survive the moment than fight whatever. I'm not you. That's valid. That's your decision. Here's what I'm saying, though. Most of the time, they get you to do one thing, and then they come back and they're like, remember this thing that made you did? That's even worse than what you were already afraid of. And then it continues until, it just keeps getting worse. So it's easier to nip it in the bud right there and just say, nope. No, I'm not going to be blackmailed, and then just kind of live with the idea of it might really suck if it gets out to people I care about, or whatever you did that you don't want to be blackmailed for. But now you have the power to tell them and talk to them and sit down with them in an honest conversation and talk about, hey, this person is blackmailing you, and be the situation under your control instead of it going out of control by this person taking it into their hands. Yeah, and B, it's sometimes some humiliation and information getting out that you didn't want to or plan to is way better than you ruining your life or just doing a bunch of things you don't want to on top of that to try and fix this mistake or this thing that exists. Again, I don't know your situation perfectly, so you might be like, I really can't. That's valid. That's okay. I'm just, like honestly, you do what you need to do. I'm just pointing out what typically happens. But honestly, what you do, whatever works, because it's valid, and it's what you need to do. Advice is not 110% law, While some people like to pretend it is, they're like, you received this advice, now you must follow it or you are doomed. No. Advice it's good to listen to advice with open heart and mind, especially because people are... Usually if someone's giving you advice, they care a lot about you and they want things to work out for you. And so they're coming with their perspective and saying, this, if you reject it, then, it takes a lot for someone, typically speaking, to come up to you with advice and say, here's what I care about, here's my opinion. Sometimes it's not, sometimes they're just yelling and venting at you, and they're like, you're terrible, and do this, or blah, blah, blah. But typically speaking, if the person genuinely cares about you, like, hey, this. Even if you do not agree with it, receive it well. Like, come on, man. If you were to walk up to someone and, like, be genuinely concerned and be like, hi, here's my humble perspective, please, like, look at it, at least, like, actually just look at it, and be like, yeah, okay, you don't have to take it. Advice in the end is 110% up to you. No one can, like, yeah, like, it's up to you, man, and that's valid, so, yeah, alright, thank you for joining us for another happily ever after, or not so happily ever after. That's up for you to decide. Whatever you decide is valid, because you're valid. You're valid. Either way, this is the end for this episode, so tune in later and we can turn a new page and learn more together.